The stage lights were bright, the studio hush electric. Real Time with Bill Maher was live, ratings soaring, and the audience braced for another hot-button debate. The lineup promised fireworks. Politicians, activists, then the announcement. Denzel Washington would join the panel. Whispers coursed through the crowd. Surely this was a promotional gimmick. But deep down, everyone sensed something bigger approaching. Bill smiled as Denzel took the stage. "Thanks for joining the circus," he teased. The audience chuckled. Denzel returned the grin, calm, poised, ready. Bill launched in. "Denzel, politics are messy, much messier than Hollywood scripts. You left Hollywood for quiet, not chaos. Why step into this minefield?" Denzel held the question with a soft tilt of his head. "Because sometimes quiet isn't enough," he replied. "In fame, you learn silence can be consent." Eyes sharpened. Bill nodded, leaning forward. "Fair. But silence lets extremists grow. So do you stay out, or do you speak up?" Denzel paused, weight of a lifetime in that moment. Then he asked Bill a question nobody expected. "Do you think your platform makes you a better judge than those you mock?" The audience gasped. Bill blinked, searching for the punch, but Denzel continued. "You once called people idiots on air. But Bill, where's the accountability when your words cost someone their reputation? When a casual line reinforces stereotypes? Do your jokes count just because they land in laughter?" Silence. Even the audience leaned forward. Bill, recalibrating, offered an offhand laugh. "Oh, come on. That's not the same, isn't it?" Came the riposte, smooth and cutting. "Because your words are heard. They echo. And yes, you're funny. But maybe what we need from funny men now is subtlety, not swords." The studio quieted. A studio mic picked up soft claps. Bill shifted, off balance, rare territory for a man so practiced. Bill tried again. "You're saying I'm too sharp?" Denzel leaned in, soft, steady. "I'm saying sugar-coated knives still cut." The tension wasn't dramatic. It was electric. Bill ran a hand through his hair. Audience held breath. "Tell me, Denzel, what's your solution?" Another pause. Then, "We start with listening instead of launching. We build, not break. Humor shouldn't be exempt from responsibility. Don't just land the joke. Look behind it." Bill leaned back, almost grudging respect in his eyes. The audience erupted into genuine applause this time. No applause audio, real, raw. Bill nodded slowly. "All right," he said, voice steady. "You win this round. You earned it." Denzel nodded, a rare public acknowledgement of victory. Not with gloating, just with grace. As the cameras continued rolling, the crowd buzzed. That night, Denzel Washington had done the unthinkable. He'd taken on one of America's sharpest satirists, not with anger, but with eloquence. And he'd shifted the conversation, live and unfiltered. Bill Maher had been stunned. The audience had been silenced, and the internet was already lighting up. As the commercial break rolled in, tension remained thick in the studio. Bill Maher stood up from his chair, half smiling, clearly trying to regain composure as producers buzzed around him. Denzel remained seated, quietly sipping water, his posture unshaken. Behind the scenes, the moment had already gone viral. Tweets exploded. TikTok spliced the exchange into dramatic edits. "Denzel the diplomat." One viral caption read, "He didn't shout. He didn't roast. He reasoned." But as the show resumed, Bill wasn't done. This wasn't just another segment now. It was something different. It had become personal. "So, Denzel," Bill began, smoothing his jacket, "let me toss you a curveball. You said earlier that silence can be consent. Then where were you during BLM? Where were you when people needed celebrity voices?" The studio fell silent. It was a jab, and everyone knew it. Denzel's eyes didn't flicker. I was mentoring young black men who didn't need microphones, they needed direction. I was paying college tuition for students you've never heard of. I was present where cameras weren't. That hit harder than any monologue. Bill scoffed lightly, trying to ease tension. Well, we can't all be saints. But transparency, Denzel, that matters. Visibility matters. Denzel tilted his head. Visibility to who? The performative class, or the people actually hurting? There was no comeback, no snarky rebuttal, just the sound of audience members murmuring in agreement. But Denzel didn't stop there. You see, Bill, we've created this strange system. A performer says something serious, and they're asked, why are you in politics? But a politician says something ridiculous, and no one asks, why are you pretending to perform? The roles are blurred. Bill blinked. You mean like Trump? Denzel chuckled, almost reluctantly. Like Trump. But also like half the media trying to be entertainers first, truth tellers second. The line split the audience down the middle. Applause on one side, stunned silence on the other. Bill finally sighed. You know, you're surprisingly political for someone who stayed out of politics. No, Denzel replied. I'm just an American who's tired of being manipulated. And that's when the floodgates opened. Social media caught fire. Hashtags like #DenzelDestroyismer and #MikeDropDenzel started trending. Clips of the conversation were dissected on CNN and MSNBC within hours. Fox News even tried spinning the moment as Hollywood's arrogance, but even their commentators struggled to twist it convincingly. Back on set, Bill took a breath. Look, man, I get it. You're thoughtful. But people also want leaders who entertain, who keep it light. Isn't that part of why you're here? Denzel smiled. I'm here because someone has to remind us that entertainment is not escape. It's reflection. And we're too busy laughing to look in the mirror. Boom. Again, the audience rose with applause, this time louder, longer. Even Bill's staff behind the camera exchanged glances. You could see it on their faces. Something real had just happened. At that point, the interview changed. Bill dropped the performance. The sarcasm softened. Denzel had turned the debate into dialogue, and in the process, he didn't just silence Bill Maher, he rewired the entire dynamic of celebrity guest interviews. Later that evening, clips of the show hit over 20 million views within 12 hours. Top trending on YouTube, Twitter, and even Reddit. Journalists praised the appearance as historic, measured, and proof that intellect doesn't have to shout to be heard. Meanwhile, political commentators across the aisle started quoting him. Not just liberals, conservatives too. Not for agenda, but for clarity. He didn't play teams, one pundit said. He played truth. And it wasn't just political junkies or cable hosts who noticed. High school debate clubs began analyzing Denzel's answers. College professors cited his poise as the gold standard of civil discourse. Even rival actors posted supportive reactions, praising the veteran actor not just for his craft, but for his clarity of conscience. Bill Maher, for his part, addressed the moment on his next episode. Denzel came in and cleaned the floor, he admitted, half smiling. Respect. In the days that followed, invitations poured in for Denzel, from CNN town halls to political forums. He declined most of them. He wasn't looking to build a brand. He had already delivered what he came for, and that's what made it powerful. The following morning, the media landscape was ablaze. Cable news networks couldn't replay the segment fast enough. Denzel Washington delivers masterclass in discourse, read CNN's Morning Chiron. MSNBC followed with Bill Maher outmatched by Hollywood royalty. Even Joe Scarborough called it the most articulate and devastating live clapback we've seen this year. But it wasn't just television. Something deeper was unfolding. For decades, Denzel Washington had been an enigmatic figure, revered but reserved. He rarely inserted himself into culture wars or trending topics. He didn't tweet. He didn't rant on Instagram Live. He wasn't someone who needed to go viral. And that's what made this moment so magnetic. His words weren't designed to trend. They were designed to last. Across college campuses, clips of Denzel's appearance were studied in media literacy and political science classes. Professors used the moment to explore themes like rhetorical strategy, cultural identity, and media framing. You see, one professor explained during a lecture at Howard University, Denzel didn't argue with Maher, he realigned the rules of engagement. That's strategy. Meanwhile, on TikTok, Gen Z gave the moment their signature remix treatment. Audio bites of Denzel saying, "I was present where cameras weren't," were layered over scenes of quiet heroism, nurses, teachers, community workers. It became an anthem. A viral duet video showed a young man mouthing Denzel's line, "I'm just an American tired of being manipulated," while images of inflation, student debt, and political scandals flashed behind him. It struck a nerve. Denzel Washington had unintentionally launched a movement, but things weren't quiet behind the scenes. Bill Maher's team was shaken. Some insiders admitted privately that the moment had changed the tenor of the show. One producer anonymously shared with a media blog, "We didn't expect to get steamrolled by a Hollywood actor." But he wasn't acting. He came to speak truth and did it. Others in the late night space were taking notes. Stephen Colbert's team debated how to address the moment. Jimmy Kimmel quipped during his monologue, "Denzel just set a new bar for guests. The rest of us are out here trying to be funny. He's out here delivering TED Talks." Meanwhile, on the political front, things got even more interesting. Several moderate politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, tweeted Denzel's lines. Tim Scott quoted him in a town hall. Cory Booker brought him up on MSNBC. Nikki Haley, during a podcast appearance, even said, "I disagree with a lot of Hollywood, but Denzel, he makes you listen." What stunned most observers wasn't just the bipartisan appeal, but the way Denzel's message transcended traditional echo chambers. It resonated with conservatives, progressives, independents, and even the politically disillusioned. It wasn't what he said, it was how he said it. In a landscape defined by shouting matches and viral rage, Denzel had spoken slowly, carefully, with intention. And that calm, grounded delivery echoed like thunder. The entertainment world responded too. Actors from across genres reached out. Viola Davis tweeted, "We don't deserve Denzel." Morgan Freeman told Entertainment Tonight he reminded America why words matter and how to use them with precision. Even rising stars like Lakeith Stanfield posted Instagram tributes, thanking Denzel for showing us how it's done. But not everyone was applauding. Right-wing media outlets, eager to reframe the narrative, began publishing op-eds attacking Denzel's appearance. Breitbart accused him of Hollywood sanctimony. The Daily Wire published a headline that read, "Another elitist actor thinks he knows best." Still, their arguments lacked traction. Even some of their audience pushed back. Comment sections filled with phrases like, "He wasn't preaching, he was reflecting," and "If you're mad at Denzel, you weren't listening." One clip, in particular, hit 40 million views on Facebook in just 3 days. It featured Denzel calmly responding to Maher's question about visibility with, "Some of us do the work without the need for applause." It became a mantra, a rallying cry. Merchandise followed: t-shirts, hoodies, stickers with "Do the work, skip the applause." Even major brands caught on. Nike reposted the line in an Instagram story. Starbucks tweeted it out during their diversity initiative campaign. Suddenly, Denzel was everywhere, but he hadn't lifted a finger. What was most fascinating, though, was his refusal to capitalize on the moment. No follow-up interviews, no press tour, no grand victory lap. His team released a simple statement. Mr. Washington is honored by the response, but remains focused on his mentorship programs and community initiatives. And with that, he disappeared back into the real work, the same work he referenced during the broadcast. Contrast that with Bill Maher. In the days following the interview, he oscillated between praise and defensiveness. On his podcast, he joked, "Look, I'm not mad. I just wasn't expecting to get filibustered by Denzel Washington." But even his tone seemed different, less smug, more measured, because even Bill knew. This wasn't about losing an argument. It was about learning the cost of underestimating someone who doesn't need to win one. In private conversations, insiders at HBO admitted they were reevaluating future guests. People want more substance now, one producer noted. That Denzel moment showed there's a hunger for more than viral snark. And perhaps the most surreal impact of all? A group of high schoolers in Atlanta launched a new debate league named the Washington Forum. Their mission? To promote dignity in dialogue. Their motto? Say it with purpose. When asked why they chose Denzel as their symbol, one student replied, "He didn't argue to be right. He argued to be heard." That's what made the exchange so historic. Not because Denzel destroyed Bill Maher with volume or venom, but because he did something infinitely harder. He turned tension into testimony. And in a world saturated with noise, that quiet thunder still echoed. As the weeks turned into months, what had begun as a single moment between two high-profile men, one a respected actor, the other a polarizing commentator, blossomed into something far more enduring. But the real power of Denzel Washington's clapback wasn't just that it silenced a room or trended for a week. It was that it altered the energy in spaces where change rarely happens. Denzel didn't destroy Maher in the traditional sense. He didn't raise his voice, call names, or storm out of the studio. He did something more powerful. He held the mirror up to the host, to the media, to the audience watching at home, to America. And he did it without drama, just clarity. The confrontation had created ripple effects everywhere. In Hollywood, studios began to rethink the political messaging of their projects. A new wave of interest surged in producing films that carried depth over spectacle. Producers cited the Denzel moment as a pivot point, saying audiences were clearly yearning for something real, thoughtful, even uncomfortable. "We realized people aren't allergic to complexity," one studio exec said anonymously. "They're allergic to arrogance disguised as truth." In the halls of academia, think pieces flooded journals and symposiums. Scholars dissected the Maher-Washington dialogue the way they once pored over Baldwin versus Buckley or the Frost/Nixon interviews. But the consensus was unique. This wasn't just about political ideology. It was about cultural fluency. Washington didn't just speak truth to power. One Columbia professor wrote, "He spoke with power, without betraying humility." Even in religious communities, particularly Black churches across the U.S., pastors used his words as sermon anchors. One Sunday in Detroit, a preacher replayed a clip of Denzel saying, "I don't need the lights to know who I am," before launching into a fiery sermon about identity and purpose. But perhaps the most tangible result? Community engagement. Civic groups saw a boost in volunteer numbers. Local town halls noticed younger attendees quoting Denzel. One youth group in Newark started a series called Quiet Thunder, focused on amplifying voices who preferred dialogue over diatribe. Something else started to shift too: late-night television itself. Where once these platforms were dominated by snark, sarcasm, and one-liner zingers, producers began opening up more room for guests who could go deep without getting loud. Writers even began changing the pacing of interviews, allowing for longer, uninterrupted exchanges. Colbert mentioned in an interview that Denzel interview made every host check themselves, not just for how we ask questions, but for whether we're even listening to the answers. As for Maher, he didn't crumble, nor did he double down. But viewers noted a slow, visible recalibration. He began inviting more diverse voices, not just in race or gender, but in temperament. Gone were the usual shouting matches with talking heads. Instead, he featured a poet, a sociologist, a prison reform activist. Subtle signs that he'd realized something that night. Intellectual domination doesn't equal moral authority. On one episode, a caller asked him directly, "Did Denzel make you rethink anything?" He paused, then said, "I thought I was prepared for that conversation." But there's a difference between being prepared to argue and being prepared to grow. But despite all of this, Denzel never gave another interview about the moment. He didn't explain his side, didn't celebrate it, didn't monetize it. When asked at a film premiere about the Maher appearance, he simply replied, "That wasn't a moment. That was a reminder." And in many ways, that was the closing note on the entire saga. Denzel Washington had not come to win an argument. He had come to deliver a message, and he let the message do the walking. What made the moment so rare, so defining, was that it didn't exist to feed the algorithm. It fed the spirit. It wasn't a clapback designed for applause. It was a conversation designed for accountability. And in that accountability, millions saw something they hadn't felt in a long time on television: integrity. And even months later, the resonance of that moment persisted, not as a trending topic, but as a touchstone, a reminder of what real presence, discipline, and clarity look like when they're not being performed for clout, but offered in service of something deeper, something better. So, what started as a routine segment on a popular talk show ended up being something more: a cinematic moment, a cultural mirror, a moral checkpoint. And it proved something powerful about Denzel Washington, not just the actor, not even the icon, but the man. Because in a world addicted to attention, it was his silence after the moment that spoke the loudest. He walked into a room expecting nothing, brought everything, and left with his legacy untouched. Except now, it had grown even larger.